Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a horror book that's coming out on March 26th from Saga Press. I received a copy of this book from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review. I was going to wear my Halloween mask that I wore when I reviewed the second book, but I couldn't find it. It was buried behind all of this stuff because obviously we organize our crawl space thing in order of when we need things. So the Halloween box, which we will need, the furthest amount of time from now, is way at the back, and I didn't want to move like a million paint cans and all the golf clubs, all this stuff just to get to it for this video. I apologize. Yeah. Anyway, if you've read the first two books in this trilogy, this book is definitely worth reading. If you haven't read any of these books yet, I don't know why you're watching the review of this, but yeah. So what is this book about? Obviously, spoilers for books 1 and 2. It's been 4 years in prison since Jade Daniels saw her hometown of Proof Rock, Idaho, the day she took the fall, protecting her friend Letha and her family from incrimination. Since then, her reputation and the town have changed dramatically. There's a lot of unfinished business in Proof Rock, from serial killer cultists to the rich trying to buy Western authenticity. But there's one aspect of Proof Rock no one wants to confront, until Jade comes back to town. The curse of the Lake Witch is waiting, and now it's time for the final stand. Horror has a big place in my chainsaw heart. I loved it so much when I was growing up. And even when it scared me so bad I couldn't sleep, I loved watching horror movies. I've gotten a bit more sensitive towards them since having kids. I mean, at least certain topics, mainly those involving children. And I've never enjoyed those that featured sexualized violence. But I do love ghost stories and campy 80s slashers. In fact, every year in October, my husband and I try to watch as many 60s to 80s horror movies as we can. I'll link the video I made last year here at the end, which actually has a couple that were referenced in this book. As such, this book series is so engaging to me because, for the most part, I've seen the movies that Jade references. There are some pretty obscure ones too, but I think I watched about 90% of the movies that are referenced in the book. Brag, brag, brag. As such, as an homage to horror, this book and the series work so well. Jade's referencing of these movies brings the story into our reality, making it even more immersive than just a regular book. This book, in terms of subgenres of horror, is definitely aiming for the highest body count possible and adding in a bit of zombies and revenge thriller. And, well, unfortunately, it feels kind of like the end of Cabin in the Woods. There are so many baddies running around, it's just chaotic. I was a bit torn at times who I was supposed to be worried about attacking Jade because it seemed like everyone was a threat. But perhaps this was supposed to be medic in that we feel as overwhelmed as Jade. I don't know. I don't think it entirely worked for me. I wish there'd been like one kind of main bad guy that she could stand up to as opposed to kind of all of these things happening at once. I think that's why I like the second book so much because aside from kind of one small subplot, the ginger cinnamon thing, I really liked the kind of showdown aspect of that. It felt more kind of like slasher to me. Anyway, similarly, but more successfully, once the action actually begins, it just doesn't stop. Unlike the other two, which take place over a couple of days and have time for kind of like for Jade to like reflect, this one has a very short time span of action. This doesn't make it seem rushed though, as there are still developments of side characters, there's tragic deaths and emotional resonance, especially at the end. Yet, aside from the great prologue, the start does take a while to get going. Maybe it's different in the United States, and I know Letha was behind this too, but don't you need to go to teacher's college to be a teacher? Like, don't you need some kind of formal training? And they'll hire former convicts to be teachers? Is the United States, is this actually the United States? Like, does this happen? I would have been a bit happier with Jade's characterization if she hadn't started out as well, kind of a wuss in this book. She lost a lot of her fire, I found, at the start, and there wasn't a real clear trajectory of her getting it back. Like, she does get it back, but I didn't understand why it was kind of gone at the start. Anyway, this was also the heaviest of the novels in terms of deaths that occur, and there was a part where I had to stop reading for a bit because I was triggered by it. I also felt lost at a few parts because characters from the other books return, but I just didn't remember their significance or who they were. So if you're reading these books back to back, that won't be an issue at all. But given these are just regular humans with average backstories, it was hard to recall, a year plus later and 100 books later, who Jocelyn was, for example, for me. I was like, I should know who this is, but I don't. And the whole ginger cinnamon thing, I was like, I don't remember the intricacies of this at all. But like the other two novels, this is a horror that dips into the literary. As such, we have stream of consciousness narrative structure, which allows Jade to bring in her allusions to films, and we have a not quite straightforward way of description. I actually enjoyed this. I thought it was really, really interesting because it leaves space to have these really kind of poignant and elegiac at times lines that I really liked. There were times though I had to reread a few sentences to parse what had actually happened, as sometimes things happen so quickly and with Jade's kind of cryptic narrative style that I was like, wait, did that really happen? Like a certain character dies at one point and I didn't even realize that they had died. When Jade was talking about it a few pages later, I was like, they're dead? So I had to go back and reread it and be like, oh, I just missed a very important word in that sentence. Um, Overall, unfortunately, I would say this is my least favorite of the three, but it still manages to have an impactful and emotional ending that is definitely tear jerking. It's definitely worth reading if you love the first two books, though. I mean, you gotta finish the trilogy, right? And it is a good book. It's just the first one, the first two blew me away, and this one just was just kind of good. I'll definitely be reading more of Stephen Graham Jones in the future. I've already read The Only Good Indians on audiobook, but I don't review it, I don't think. But I really enjoyed that one too. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you again to the publishers and to NetGalley for the e-arc. I really, really appreciate it.